What if I told you that the very thing you believe is making you a better trader is actually the reason you're bleeding money? Think about your screen right now. How many indicators are you running? How many lines, oscillators, and colored zones are covering your price action? Here's the uncomfortable truth. Every single thing you add to your chart beyond what truly matters is not making you smarter. It's making you slower, more confused, and far more likely to hesitate when the perfect setup finally appears right in front of your eyes. But before we begin, please hit the like button and let me know where in the world you're watching from today. It's always fascinating seeing who's joining us from around the world. And if you haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any of our future videos. Now let me ask you something personal. Has this ever happened to you? You see a trend forming, clean and obvious, and every fiber of your being says this is the one. But then you start checking your indicators. The RSI looks a bit high. The MACD hasn't quite crossed yet. Maybe you should wait for one more confirmation. So you sit there paralyzed by analysis, watching as the price explodes exactly where you knew it would go, leaving you behind with nothing but regret and a mental note to trust yourself next time. Here's what nobody tells you when you're starting out in trading. The market doesn't care how sophisticated your system is. It doesn't reward the trader with the most colorful chart or the most elaborate spreadsheet. The market rewards one thing and one thing only: decisive execution at the right moment. And that kind of execution doesn't come from complexity, it comes from brutal simplicity. Stay with me until the end, because what you're about to discover might completely change how you approach every single trade from this moment forward. We're going to talk about a trend setup, so simple that most traders dismiss it as too basic to work. Yet this is the exact same approach that allows professional traders to turn small, carefully placed entries into positions that run for weeks, capturing moves that amateur traders can only dream about while they're busy adjusting their 14th indicator. The irony is almost painful when you really think about it. Traders spend thousands of hours learning complex strategies, buying expensive courses, and filling their screens with tools they barely understand, all while the answer has been sitting right there in plain sight. The cleanest trends, the most powerful breakouts, and the highest probability setups don't hide behind layers of technical wizardry. They reveal themselves through simple, repeatable price behavior that anyone can learn to spot once they stop looking for reasons to complicate what should be straightforward. What if the difference between your current results and the consistency you're chasing isn't about learning more, but about stripping away everything that's clouding your vision? What if explosive gains don't require perfect timing or complex calculations, but simply the courage to act when a simple, proven setup appears? The professionals already know this secret, and now it's time for you to discover exactly how this works and why. Think about the last time you watched price compress against a major resistance level. You could feel the tension building, couldn't you? The candles getting tighter, volume starting to shift, and somewhere deep in your gut you knew what was about to happen. But instead of trusting that instinct, that clear signal the market was giving you, what did you do? You probably pulled up another indicator, maybe checked the stochastic, glanced at the Bollinger Bands, waited for the MACD histogram to confirm what your eyes were already screaming at you. And by the time all your tools finally agreed, the move was halfway done, and your entry was nowhere near as good as it should have been. This is the hidden truth about trading that nobody wants to admit, because it challenges everything we've been taught about being thorough and prepared. The market doesn't punish you for being too simple. It punishes you for being too clever. Every moment you spend trying to outsmart price action is a moment you're not actually trading, you're just thinking about trading. There's a massive difference between those two things, and that difference shows up directly in your account balance at the end of every month. Here's what really happens when you pile information on top of information. Your brain starts looking for reasons not to take the trade instead of reasons to take it. One indicator says go, but another says wait. The price structure looks perfect, but the volume profile has a small anomaly. Suddenly you're not making decisions based on what's actually happening. You're making decisions based on which piece of conflicting data scares you the most. This is not analysis. This is paralysis dressed up as professionalism, and the market moves on without you every single time. If you found value in this, subscribe to the channel. I'm putting together content for traders who want the real path forward, not just another strategy to add to the pile they'll never use. The transformation from struggling trader to consistent performer doesn't happen when you finally learn that one secret indicator or discover some hidden pattern that nobody else knows about. That transformation happens the moment you realize that clarity beats complexity every time. One clean line in the sand, one trigger that either happens or doesn't, one stop loss that either gets hit or doesn't. This is the mindset shift that changes everything, because suddenly you're not juggling 12 different variables trying to predict the future. You're simply responding to what the chart is telling you right now in this present moment. Now I want to go even deeper into this concept of why our natural instincts work against us in trading. We're conditioned from childhood to believe that more effort equals better results, that studying harder, gathering more information, and considering every possible angle is the path to success. That works beautifully in school, in research, in building a business. But trading is different. The decisions that matter most happen in seconds, and in those seconds, the trader who can see clearly through the noise will always beat the trader drowning in data. The journey from complexity to simplicity isn't about dumbing things down. It's about sharpening your focus until only what matters remains visible. That's where the real power lies, and that's exactly what separates small gains from explosive ones. Write in the comments, clarity over complexity, if this is starting to make sense to you. Let me share something with you that took me years to understand, and it's probably the most uncomfortable truth in this entire journey. You don't have a data problem, you have a discipline problem. I know that sounds harsh, but hear me out, because this revelation changed everything for me. Every time you abandon a setup after 2 losses and go searching for something new, every time you add another layer to your strategy because you're convinced the missing piece is just one more tool away, you're not evolving as a trader. You're running from the one thing that actually builds wealth in the markets, which is the boring, unglamorous act of doing the same thing over and over until it becomes as natural as breathing. Think about any master craftsman you've ever seen, a chef who's perfected a signature dish, a musician who can play a piece blindfolded, an athlete who executes the same movement with precision under massive pressure. None of them got there by changing their approach every week. They got there by refining one core skill until the execution became automatic, until they could perform it flawlessly, even when their emotions were screaming at them to do something different. Trading demands the exact same commitment, but most people never give themselves the chance to reach that level because their focus is scattered across a dozen different methods they barely understand. Here's what happens behind the scenes in the mind of a consistently profitable trader. They're not seeing something magical that you can't see. They're not using secret indicators or insider information. What they've done is train themselves to recognize one specific rhythm in price movement, and they wait for that rhythm to appear with the patience of someone who knows exactly what they're looking for. Because here's the hidden truth about markets that changes everything once you truly grasp it. Price doesn't move randomly. It moves in patterns that reflect human psychology, waves of fear and greed, expansion and contraction, accumulation and distribution. These patterns have existed for as long as markets have existed, and they'll continue long after we're gone. When you strip away all the noise, all the complicated theories and fancy terminology, you start seeing these waves clearly. You begin to feel when pressure is building, when momentum is shifting, when exhaustion is setting in. This isn't mystical intuition, it's pattern recognition developed through focused repetition on one simple approach. The impact of this shift in your trading can't be overstated, because suddenly you're not trying to predict what the market will do. You're simply reading what it's already telling you and responding accordingly. That subtle difference in mindset transforms you from someone who's constantly guessing into someone who's systematically reacting to probability. The decisions that lead to explosive gains aren't complicated, they're just clear. While everyone else is buried in analysis paralysis, drowning in conflicting signals from 20 different sources, the trader with a simple plan sees the wave forming and positions accordingly. No hesitation, no second guessing, just execution based on a pattern they've seen work 100 times before. That's the real edge, and it has nothing to do with having more information than anyone else. Drop "I see the rhythm" in the comments if you're starting to recognize these patterns in your own charts. You want to know the exact moment when traders sabotage themselves. It's right after they've identified a perfect setup, the price. Structure is clean, the trend is obvious, everything aligns. But instead of executing, they start hunting for confirmation number 3, 4, 5. They convince themselves they're being thorough, being professional, being smart. But what they're actually doing is creating a permission structure to never take the trade at all. Because here's what nobody tells you: you're never going to feel completely certain. Not ever. The market doesn't work that way. It doesn't send you a written guarantee that this trade will work before you enter. What you actually need is remarkably simple. You need price to show you something specific, a clear signal that your setup is valid. And you need your own conviction that when you see that signal, you're going to act on it without negotiating with yourself. That's it. 2 confirmations, not 10. Everything beyond that is just fear dressed up as due diligence. The transformation happens when you realize that your edge isn't found in gathering more evidence. Your edge is in having the courage to execute when your 2 conditions are met, even when every fiber of your being wants to wait for just one more sign. This is where the mindset shift from amateur to professional becomes crystal clear. Before the market even opens, the professional has already done all the thinking. Levels are marked, triggers are defined, risk is calculated. There's no decision-making happening in real time because all the decisions were made when emotions weren't involved. When price approaches the zone, there's no internal debate, no questioning, no second-guessing. It's simply execution. The amateur does the opposite. They show up with a vague idea of what they're looking for, and then they try to make critical decisions while their money is on the line and adrenaline is pumping through their system. That's not trading, that's gambling with extra steps. Here's the hidden truth that separates people who consistently extract money from the markets and people who just spin their wheels. Trading is not entertainment. It's not supposed to give you a rush. It's not about the thrill of catching the perfect bottom or nailing the exact top. Those are ego games, and the market destroys egos without mercy. Real trading is methodical, systematic, and honestly quite boring when done correctly. You're watching for specific conditions, you execute when they appear, and you move on. No drama, no emotional highs and lows, just the steady accumulation of small edges compounded over time. That's how real wealth is built in these markets. The impact of chasing excitement instead of pursuing clarity shows up in every account that starts strong and ends broken. Because excitement demands constant action, and constant action means taking trades that don't meet your criteria. You start forcing setups that aren't there, entering positions just to feel involved, to feel like a trader. But the person who treats this as a business, who can sit on their hands for days waiting for their specific setup, who executes their plan with cold precision when it finally appears. That person slowly but surely pulls ahead, not through heroic gains or brilliant predictions, but through the unglamorous work of doing the same profitable thing repeatedly without deviation. Leave boring equals profitable in the comments if you're ready to trade like a business, not a casino. What would your trading look like if you could remove emotion from the equation entirely? I'm not talking about becoming a robot or suppressing your feelings. I'm talking about building a framework so clear, so definitive, that there's simply no room for emotional interpretation. Your entry is either valid or it isn't. Your stop gets hit or it doesn't. Your target gets reached or it doesn't. Binary outcomes, black and white decisions, no gray area where fear and greed can whisper their lies and pull you off course. This is what real rules look like, and they're the foundation of every trader who's managed to turn this craft into a sustainable income stream rather than an expensive hobby. The beauty of having genuine rules, not guidelines or suggestions, but actual ironclad rules, is that they remove the burden of choice during moments of stress. You're not standing there asking yourself, should I take this when price hits your level? You already decided weeks ago that when these specific conditions align, you execute, period. The decision was made in calm. Rationality, not in the heat of market movement. That shift alone changes everything, because now you're operating from a place of predetermined logic rather than real-time emotion. And here's the revelation that most traders take years to understand. Trust in your setup doesn't come from it being perfect. Trust comes from seeing it work and fail enough times that you understand its personality, its tendencies, its probability distribution. When you've taken the same setup 100 times, something profound happens behind the scenes of your psychology. You stop personalizing the losses. You stop celebrating the wins as if you've discovered gold. It all becomes data points in a larger statistical sample. One trade doesn't define you anymore because you know that over the next 50 trades, your edge will express itself. That's freedom. That's what allows you to stay in this game long enough to actually become good at it. But you only reach that state through repetition of one approach, not through the constant reinvention that most traders mistake for progress. If this resonated with you, show it with a like. It tells me we're speaking the same language and helps other traders who need to hear this find their way here. Here's where the journey gets interesting and where most people completely miss the path. Every single time you tweak your system, every time you add a new filter or change your entry criteria because you had a bad week, you're resetting your progress to zero. You're not improving, you're starting over. And starting over means you never accumulate the experience necessary to build real skill. The market will humble anyone who tries to outsmart it through cleverness, but it generously rewards the person who shows up day after day, executing the same simple plan with unwavering consistency. The impact of this approach compounds in ways that aren't immediately visible. Month 1 looks the same as month 12 in terms of the actions you're taking, but the confidence, the calm execution, the ability to hold through pullbacks because you've seen this exact pattern resolve positively dozens of times before, that's what separates break-even traders from those pulling consistent profits. Most traders fail not because their strategy is flawed. They fail because they never give any single strategy enough time to prove itself. They're collecting methods instead of mastering one. And you cannot master what you constantly change. The transformation from struggling to succeeding doesn't require learning something new. It requires finally committing to what you already know works and repeating it until the execution becomes as automatic as your morning routine. Type repetition over reinvention if you're committing to mastering one approach instead of chasing the next shiny object. You know what separates someone who survives a crisis from someone who crumbles? It's not intelligence. It's not even courage in the traditional sense. It's preparation. It's having practiced your response so many times that when chaos erupts, you don't freeze, you execute. This principle applies everywhere, from emergency rooms to cockpits to battlefields, and it absolutely applies to trading. When price suddenly spikes against your position, when the candles start printing faster than you can process, when your heart rate jumps and that familiar knot forms in your stomach, you don't have the luxury of contemplating 12 different scenarios. You have seconds to act, and in those seconds, the only thing that saves you is a plan so simple you can follow it even when your higher thinking has temporarily shut down. This is the hidden truth behind why complicated trading systems fail under real market pressure. They work beautifully on replay when you can pause, analyze, and consider every angle. But in the live environment, when real money is moving and emotions are flooding your system, complexity becomes your enemy. You can't remember which combination of indicators needs to align. You can't recall whether this particular scenario falls under Rule 6 or Rule 12. All that sophisticated analysis you built during calm market hours evaporates the moment volatility hits. But a simple plan, one with 3 clear rules you could recite in your sleep, that plan holds firm. It becomes your anchor when everything else feels uncertain. Think about how pilots are trained. They don't study every possible emergency, a scenario, and then improvise solutions during flight. They drill specific checklists over and over until the response becomes automatic. Engine failure at altitude, there's a checklist. Hydraulic system malfunction, there's a checklist. Sudden turbulence while approaching landing, there's a checklist. When the actual emergency happens and adrenaline is coursing through their veins, they don't need to think creatively or make judgment calls on 20 variables. They follow the practiced procedure. That's what keeps planes in the air. That's what keeps traders in the game. Your trading setup is your checklist. Your entry rules are your instruments. When the market starts shaking, when uncertainty fills the screen, you don't panic because you're not trying to figure out what to do. You already know what to do. You've practiced this exact response pattern dozens or hundreds of times. The impact of this mindset shift cannot be overstated because it transforms trading from an emotional roller coaster into a professional operation. You're not reacting to fear or greed anymore. You're executing trained responses to specific market conditions. Behind the scenes of every consistently profitable trader is this same foundation. They've stripped their approach down to the essential components, practiced those components until they're instinctive, and now they operate with calm clarity even when everyone else is panicking. The journey to that level of composure doesn't require years of complex study. It requires commitment to simplicity and repetition until your plan becomes second nature. Comment, "My checklist is ready," if you're building that unshakable foundation right now. Let me tell you about the most dangerous moment in a trader's journey, and it's not when they're losing money. It's when they're about to give up on something that actually works. You take a setup twice, it fails both times, and suddenly your mind is already searching for the next approach. You tell yourself you're being adaptive, being smart, refusing to throw good money after bad. But what you're actually doing is guaranteeing that you'll never develop real skill at anything, because skill doesn't come from sampling every method under the sun. Skill comes from going deep on one thing until you understand it at a level that most people will never reach because they simply don't have the patience. Here's the transformation that needs to happen in your mindset if you're serious about this. Stop viewing losses as evidence that your strategy is broken. Start viewing them as data collection. When you take the same setup 20 times, you begin seeing patterns within the pattern. You notice that it performs better in certain volatility conditions. You recognize which market structures increase its probability and which ones decrease it. You develop an intuitive feel for when the setup is pristine versus when it's marginal. None of that wisdom comes from taking it twice and moving on. It comes from commitment to the process, even when short-term results are testing your resolve. The hidden truth that professionals understand and amateurs miss is that depth beats breadth every single time. A trader who knows one setup inside and out, who's seen it succeed and fail in every conceivable market condition, who understands its nuances and subtleties through hundreds of repetitions, that trader has a genuine edge. Compare that to someone who knows 10 setups superficially, who can recognize them on a chart, but has no real feel for how they behave under pressure. When real money is on the line, when the market starts moving in unexpected ways, the person with deep knowledge stays calm. The person with surface-level understanding of many approaches panics because they don't truly trust any of them. This is where the journey gets uncomfortable because it requires you to make a decision that goes against every modern impulse. You have to choose one approach and commit to it completely, knowing that the first month might be rough, knowing that there will be stretches where it doesn't work, knowing that other traders will be posting screenshots of wins from completely different strategies and you'll be tempted to abandon ship. The impact of pushing through that discomfort is immeasurable because on the other side is mastery, and mastery is what allows you to extract consistent profits from markets that destroy the majority of participants. Behind the scenes of every trader you admire, every account that shows steady upward growth month after month, is this same foundation. They're not doing anything magical. They're doing one thing exceptionally well because they've done it so many times that the execution has become instinctive. They've lived through enough losing streaks with their setup to know that it's just variance, not failure. They've captured enough winning trades to trust that their edge will express itself over time. Write one setup, complete. Mastery, if you're ready to go deep instead of wide. There's a common misconception that needs to be addressed because it's holding back more traders than almost anything else. When people hear, "keep it simple," they assume it means staying at a beginner level, never advancing beyond basic concepts. But that's completely backwards. Simplicity isn't where you start, it's where you arrive after you've learned what actually matters and had the courage to discard everything else. It's the distillation of experience, not the absence of it. Think about any master in any field. Their movements look effortless, their decisions appear obvious. That's not because they skipped the complicated parts. It's because they went through all the complexity, learned from it, and emerged on the other side with something clean and repeatable. This revelation changes everything about how you approach your development as a trader. You're not trying to stay simple out of laziness or ignorance. You're working towards simplicity as a destination. You're deliberately removing every element from your trading that doesn't directly contribute to your edge. Every indicator that sounds good in theory but clouds your decision-making in practice gets eliminated. Every analysis technique that provides interesting information but doesn't actually improve your timing gets stripped away. What remains is a framework so clear, so focused, that you can execute it with unwavering consistency, regardless of what the market throws at you. The impact of this transformation shows up immediately in your results because consistency is the only thing that allows an edge to express itself over time. If your method changes week to week, if your rules bend based on your mood or recent results, you're not trading a system. You're just reacting randomly to market noise. But when you narrow your focus to the few variables that genuinely drive price movement, when you remove everything that doesn't serve your specific edge, something powerful happens. Your actions become predictable, your results become measurable. You can finally answer the question every serious trader must answer. Does my approach actually work, or have I just been getting lucky? Now let me share something about clarity that most people only discover after years of struggle. The traders who consistently pull money from the markets aren't smarter than you. They haven't discovered some secret information that you lack. What they have is the ability to see clearly while everyone else is drowning in noise. Their charts aren't decorated with 20 colorful indicators. Their minds aren't cluttered with conflicting opinions from a dozen different sources. They've created an environment, both externally on their screens and internally in their thought process, where clarity is the default state. And from that clarity comes conviction, the ability to act decisively at precisely the moment when the majority is paralyzed by uncertainty. Behind the scenes of that decisive action is a mindset built on understanding rather than hoping. They're not guessing and then piling on analysis to justify the guess. They're seeing a clear signal and responding to it because they've responded to that exact signal hundreds of times before. The complexity that most traders wear, like a badge of sophistication, is actually their greatest weakness because it slows down decision-making and introduces doubt at the worst possible moments. Drop clear mind, clear charts if you're committed to cutting through the noise. If you've made it this far, you're already different from most people who clicked on this video. You stuck around through the entire journey, and that tells me something important about you. You're not looking for quick fixes or magic formulas. You're looking for the truth, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it requires you to let go of beliefs you've been holding on to. That's exactly the mindset that transforms struggling traders into consistent ones. Look, I create content like this because I genuinely believe that most people fail in trading not because they're incapable, but because they're being fed the wrong information. They're being sold complexity when what they need is clarity. If this video resonated with you, if it challenged something you've been thinking or confirmed something you've been feeling, do me a favor and subscribe to the channel. I'm building something here for people who are serious about this craft, people who want straight talk without the hype. Every video I put out is designed to give you that same clarity we've been talking about today. And before you go, drop "clarity is my edge" in the comments, so I know you made it all the way through. I read every single one, and it genuinely means something to know this message landed with you. If this shifted your perspective even slightly, hit that like button. It helps more people find this content, and honestly, it lets me know we're on the same page. Now there's a video right here that takes what we just covered and shows you exactly how to apply it to real market structures. It's the natural next step in this journey. Click and continue with me over there, because what you've learned today is just the beginning of what's possible when you commit to this path.